Alex, welcome to Palmer Local, man. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So, your wife Christina has been on the podcast with her company, Soft Touch Laser Hair Removal, and kind of shared a little bit of y'all's story and kind of what you guys have gone through with the different businesses and stuff. But before we get into that, I want to talk about like when you and I first spoke on the phone, right? Like something had just happened to you. You're in the news for it and everything. Or not to happen to you, but something that you did in the community to help save somebody. So talk a little about that and kind of explain that story.
Sure. So when we spoke, it was incredible because I was actually driving back to the site of this incident. Um, I really do view this as one of these moments of divine intervention where I in my role as a healthcare executive, I will oversee multiple practices or multiple offices. And on this particular day, I was going to my St. Pete office. I was in my office having a conversation with a colleague of mine, and we noticed some smoke coming out of the house that's right next door to the office. And immediately I had to run over there and said, "Hey, there's a fire. Let's go." I was calling 911 on the phone with the 911 operator, alerted the family that there was a fire and their house was on fire. And of course they were a little bit surprised. They didn't really realize what was going on. And so I had to get very like vocal, very animated to let them know, "Hey, your house is literally on fire. Let's go, get out." Come to find out there was also an elderly woman. So the grandmother was inside the house. And to make matters even more complex, she was blind. Right. And so she was blind, elderly lady. There seemed to be some cognitive issues. And there was also a language barrier because they're a Vietnamese family. And so I had tried to, reason with her to get her to go out on her own cognizance. And unfortunately, that was met with a little bit of resistance. So I had to just give her a big bear hug and pick her up and take her out of the house. Fortunately, we were able to get her out as quickly as possible because the home would eventually be engulfed in flames. And, they lost everything. It's very unfortunate. To make it even more complex, the grandson who was there, his wife was due to give birth, and they did have a beautiful little baby recently. So their baby was born, but all of their baby items were in the house and were destroyed by the fire. And this poor family didn't have home insurance at that point. So, I'm super excited that and proud that St. Pete community really did get together and rally to help that family out. They set up a GoFundMe right away. And I believe at this point they've raised about $17,000 towards their $20,000 goal. So, of course, now with the hurricane that we've encountered, our entire Pinellas County community and the Gulf, states, or Gulf portion of the state of Florida is under a little bit of, duress. So I'm concerned that it will obviously overshadow that this family still needs some help. And that's kind of the complexities of living in Florida, right? You don't always get a chance to really recover before the next one happens.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is kind of crazy that, I mean, I think growing up in here, like I don't ever recall a time when like our area has been hit by a storm like this, right? But there are so many families. You're right. Like there's so many families that are in need because they've lost like a lot of items in their house. They've completely lost their house or whatever it is. And it's not just due to the storm, like you mentioned, like this lady just lost this family just lost their house due to a fire, right? I'm sure there's many more in the community that are in that same similar situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just thankful to be there, to be honest with you. I was thankful, obviously, that I wasn't harmed and nobody was harmed. They were able to get out of the house. Thank goodness I was there and just able and willing to help. The inspiration that I saw from the community getting together was really awesome. And, I had reached out to like the Tampa Bay Rays, and they offered them an opportunity to come to a game and just take their mind off something. So it was really awesome to see the community just really help this family out.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So I want to go back to like you growing up, like and you're big into leadership, and you just wrote a book that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But um, what was your childhood like growing up, and where did you grow up?
So born and raised in Miami to Cuban immigrant parents. I'm super proud of that. My father was actually part of a group of kids that was brought over as part of Operation Peter Pan, which was a mass exodus of the children from Cuba when Castro was taking over. So, and this was sponsored by the Catholic Church. And my father, fortunately, he was able to come, and his aunt was already in Miami and had established a foster home. So he left, and his parents had stayed in Cuba for a couple years, but he was able to at least live with his aunt, and he had some cousins. So he came that way, and my parents had made their living in Miami, and I was born and raised there. Eventually, I would joined the Marines. And so I was exposed to leadership at a very young age. That was something I
Mm,
wanted to do my entire life. That was like my childhood dream, to join the Marines. And the neat thing about the Marine Corps is that if there's two of you, one is senior. So there's always an opportunity to display leadership, right? There's always a chance to exercise your leadership skills. And so I was really just introduced to that, and put on the, in a situation to lead at a very young age. And it's just progressively grown over time. The unique opportunities I had in the Marine Corps too is that I started off as an intelligence analyst. So I had a lot of exposure and a lot of interactions with senior leadership at a very young age in my career as well, which just gave me a very, a lot of confidence in being able to get up and articulate a plan, articulate, what we should do, and give my own perspective on how we should function as an organization.
mhm.
And so I've always had not just a leadership, component to my lifestyle, but also a consultative one as well. So it's allowed me to always, really do some deep analysis, be able to kind of put it together in a succinct way, and give a recommendation. And a lot of times that's what people really want.
Yeah.
They want to know exactly why they should do something, and how to do it. So,
Yeah.
so a lot of that has just been part of my lifestyle, my professional lifestyle.
Is that something that you think a lot of like if you had one big takeaway from your time serving, whether it's in the Marines or any branch of the military, like is that one big takeaway, like the leadership aspect that you learn during your time serving, that a lot of people can take with them into their next opportunities?
I would say so, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because you know you're given, like I said, leadership opportunities at a very young age,
Right.
and then you start to just build the repetitions, which is important. And you're gonna make mistakes, and you'll know about it, right? In the Marine Corps, they'll definitely
Yeah.
let you know when you made a mistake. But we're not a zero defects organization, right? We don't have a zero defects mentality, whereas you can't make mistakes as long as you learn from them, right? And that's the
Hmm.
way I choose to live my kind of leadership lifestyle, is give people the kind of the permission to be bold and make decisions. And if they can provide good rationale, support it. And if it doesn't get the right result, you learn from it. And I think
Hmm.
that's one thing that has always been inspirational to me about the Marine Corps is before the mission is even done, you're already talking about all the things it took to get there and what could have done better. So I do, and it does annoy my wife a little bit, probably my kids as well, is I live my life with this continuous improvement mindset, and always looking back and reflecting on, okay, how could we have done this better? What worked, what didn't? What are the things that we can share so that the next person coming in to do that already has the playbook for how to operate?
Yeah. Is that is that something like you've always had that instinct or that want to be better, or is that something you learned in the Marines?
I'd say it was something that probably was honed as a Marine. I think
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
kid, as a young, teenager, I don't know that you necessarily, try to run to the fire, pun intended.
Yeah.
But I would say too that I was always a person who had a very individual kind of spirit. I always had a very like just kind of independent way of doing things. Wasn't afraid to take a risk, wasn't afraid to kind of not stand out in a bad way, but I was pretty bold and pretty confident. So I think that definitely fits the description of what most Marines, then eventually kind of hone in a little bit more later on in their careers. But I feel like, for me, it's been a high level of confidence
Yeah.
throughout my life. Yeah.
Where do you think your confidence comes from? Like at an early age, like is that something that you were aware of, or is that something you just like kind of naturally had that confidence about you?
I would say some of it comes from my parents, right? My
Yeah.
mom is a very strong-willed person, and she's always been known as a person who like, gets what she wants, right? So she's very vocal, very assertive, but I think it's also always been in a way where she knows how to treat people. And I think that's something I
Mm,
definitely attribute to my ability to get things done, is because I know how to treat people. So I think there's often this misconception about Marines and perhaps the military in general, is that we can lead and tell people what to do because there's a very hierarchical structure where you tell somebody to do and they have to do it. They have no choice. That's not true, because you still have to inspire people. You have to get their buy-in in order for them to do something with enthusiasm,
mm,
right? And so I've seen my mom, um, probably more so than my dad, but I've seen my mom really be able to like earn people's trust, earn people's, kind of like ability for them to say, hey, this is a person that I do want to help,
mhm.
without being coerced, without being forced, or without being made to feel like I'm forced to help them. So that's something I think I definitely picked up from my parents. And then I think growing up in Miami, look, I grew up in an environment where you were playing outside, kids all day, kids of all ages. So as a young kid, I had kids of all ages in my neighborhood all playing together. it forced you to almost mature a little bit faster probably, and it forced you to be able to just kind of compete and be a person who can be amongst those older people without feeling like they're going to baby you or anything like that. So I think it was a maturity that probably was accelerated as a result of that environment, and that's not in a bad way at all.
Right.
I think you naturally wanted to, like an athlete who wants to play with the best so they can improve their own game. That's how my childhood was, because I always had kids of all skills and sports and age ranges, so you wanted to be able to compete with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. How do you define leadership? Like, what does leadership mean to you?
The leadership, I'd say, is of course being able to show competence, right? So you have to have some level of competence in whatever it is in the organization that you lead. I think there's an element of being inspirational, and I don't think that means like the cliche way of just motivational quotes and all that stuff. It truly means this, articulating a vision and being able to inspire people because you have inspired confidence in your ability to execute on that vision, right? And so I think leadership is getting people to do something they might not normally have done on their own. And that, I think, takes a lot of, refinement. It takes self-awareness. It takes understanding your audience. It takes understanding what the end state ultimately is. And does that land with everybody on your team, right? So I think leadership really is the ability to inspire people to do something that they might not have normally done or push them up to the top of their capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does it, and maybe it's something you kind of already touched on there, but like, how do you get people to buy into like the larger goal and stuff? Like is it the confidence you have, the belief in the plan, like showing them the plan?
I think it's a little bit of all that, right? So I think it's, the way you get folks inspired, you have to be very clear on what the end state needs to be so that you can then create milestones from the starting line to the end point, and then you can celebrate those milestones as you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be, of course, some room, like wiggle room left in to deviate if perhaps you're tracking towards a goal that doesn't necessarily end up being the right goal. What you don't want to do is be constantly chasing your tail or setting the goalpost so far or to the left or to the right that people start to lose confidence in the fact that you're leading them in the right direction. So I think there's an element of saying, here's the end state we need to get to. I want to empower you to contribute. I want to empower you with the ability to like make a your own plan on how you'll drive your team to that end state. And then as we go and make progress towards that, we're going to make a pit stop, check, and make sure we're heading still in the right direction. And the funny thing is, even as I say that, I always use a land navigation example that the Marine Corps shows all Marine Corps officers have to become almost what I would describe as an expert in land navigation. And what they do is they put you out in the forest and give you a few hours to figure out, you're looking for a little red box that's about this big, an ammo can, an ammunition can, that's painted red, and you have to plot your plots. And typically what you'll see is, a cluster of boxes in one spot, and then a couple outliers throughout the terrain. And so naturally, I've made the mistake, right, of chasing the outliers first, and then your time. So you only have so much time to be able to get a passing score. So let's say, for example, if there's 10 boxes, you need to get at least 8. Well, if you spend all your time trying to find those outliers and you don't find them, you just missed out on the opportunity to get the first 8, right? Yeah. So for me, I often try to distill the mission to like the most like easiest digestible way to make progress, because people want to see that they're actually achieving something. Yeah. And if you spend all your time chasing those wild ideas, right? So I use that as the analogy for me that just really resonates. And of course, I'm sure as I share that with people who are not in the military, they're like, what the heck is this guy talking about?
Why
but there's nothing worse. Yeah, there's nothing worse than being the guy who's out looking for those boxes and you're lost. And you know that if you fail and you don't find them all, you're going to be out there on Saturday looking for those boxes again, right? Yeah. So the reason why I do that is like, sometimes you got to just go get the easy wins. And that feels good, right? Now, if you only go for the easy wins, then you're going to get the 70 or 80% solution, which sometimes is okay, but it's not always enough to make the right amount of progress.
Yeah. It's like getting that momentum going, right? Mm-hmm. Like you need some of that, like to instill that confidence and to have the belief that like, oh, this is the right path. Like I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. I like that. So, you recently wrote a book. Is it published yet, or is it for sale yet?
So we have a pre-sale right now on
Okay,
Amazon for
pre-sale.
the ebook, and there's just some, just some last minute edits that we're making for the hard copy book
Okay.
to be available. But it should be out within the next week or so.
Okay.
So I'm expecting it to be out perhaps by the time
So
this
yeah,
airs.
by the time this
Yeah, it might
airs,
be out.
yeah.
And so the book is called The Four F's: Seeking Mastery in Faith, Family, Fitness, and Finances. And that even the sequence of the four F's. First of all, the title just kind of came to me. And then the sequence is intentional, but even that flowed naturally to come up with that in that specific order. So it's by design that, I believe, again, and this is not pushing any type of religion, but if a person wants to seek any type of self-mastery, I think you have to start with yourself and start with, the faith component of your life, right? It's like really feeling a connection to something greater than just yourself, and really being able to put some real belief and faith in that ultimately, if you're making these incremental investments in yourself, that you will see improvement. But the reality is you're going to have failures. And if
Yeah.
your faith isn't really tested and your faith isn't strong, then those failures in the other three F's might force you to capitulate, right? And so you might just not have the ability to get back up and continue on that path of self-mastery. So it's very intentional about the faith aspect of it. I do share some very personal examples of times where my faith was tested. And one, and I'll just briefly discuss is I have a brother that passed away, unfortunately, at a very young age. It's been about 8 years now. And the reason I use that example to really demonstrate my faith and how it was really recharged as a result of such a tragedy is because you have to have the context of that time, right? So my brother and I'd say our relationship unfortunately was a little bit strained. Him and I, just kind of went down different paths as we grew up. And so eventually when I decided it was time for me to exit active duty military, I ended up interviewing for all these different jobs all over, corporate America roles throughout mainly the Eastern United States, in different types of roles in like finance, consulting. And ultimately I would land in Detroit, Michigan, where he was also living with his wife. And so that in and of itself is like miraculous to me. Like, how on earth would I end up in Michigan? And what are the odds that the two of us would be there? And so I went ahead of my wife and the kids. So they stayed back, and we were living in North Carolina at the time. They stayed back so the kids could finish school. So I was ahead of them, and I got to stay at his house, spend that time with him, really rekindle that relationship. And then after just a few short months, unfortunately, he would pass away. And so I view that as, gosh, you couldn't ask for a more real, miraculous, event to show the divine intervention. I can't see it any other way. And so when I talk about faith being the pillar of my life, I tell people that despite the tragic loss, of course, my parents are always going to suffer. I will always, be grieving that loss. I still thank God that it happened in the way that it did, because that's how faithful I feel, and that's how strong I feel, and the fact that there's no other way that the stars could have aligned in that way, right? So I do tell that story in that example. And then we lived in Detroit for a few years, and after a few years, we just realized like, hey, that's not home for us, and we decided to make the move here to the Tampa Bay area, and so here we are. And the other aspects of the book, family, of course. I think it's important that to the reader who doesn't have their own family, like who's not married and has children, I think there's still some relevancy there. Like again, I use the example, my brother and I's relationship, we grew up very close, and unfortunately that would become strained over the years. It's like, don't wait, go repair those relationships. Don't wait.
And family could be anything too. It doesn't have to be like blood family, right? It's like
Correct.
whatever your family is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If there's people you care about,
Yeah.
put the grudges aside, put the, animosity aside, and go repair that, because our life is so precious, and you never know, how short it could be. So then the other aspects are, the fitness and finance piece. Like for me, fitness has been an extremely, vital part of my life. It was forced on me as a Marine, so that was something that I didn't, is part of the job description as a Marine. But for me, as I exited the Marine Corps, I wanted to maintain that same level of physical fitness.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with my just realization that how important that is to your just general health.
Yeah.
Especially as I get older, right? So for me, the fitness piece is super important. Excuse me. And then the finance piece is like anything, right? Like we all want to make more money. We all want to be prosperous. If we if we live a mindset or live a lifestyle where the mindset is, oh, investing is only for people with significant means or people who are much more affluent than I being the proverbial reader, then you won't make any progress.
Yeah.
And so the kind of the way to wrap it all together is to say every one of these can be cumbersome if you don't believe that an incremental investment in one of the four, although I believe you should make investments in all four, are outside of your own, they're unattainable.
Yeah.
And so it's almost giving a permission structure to say, even if you're a person who has no real physical fitness regimen, let's just say, just take that first step.
Yeah.
Run 1 mile, go to the gym once a week, whatever it is, make some progress and you will noticeably see the difference over time. Same thing with investing, right? There's this notion that, hey, unless you're a Wall Street banker, the investment world is not for you. And fortunately for the lay people and normal people like myself and maybe everybody that's listening to this podcast, is that even investing has become so easy.
Yeah.
But the hardest part is like anything, right? Breaking out of your own shell and taking that first step. So that's kind of what I want to promote, right? I think, even just the idea that I would have the audacity to write a book, the audacity to start to put myself out there and really try to get out and inspire and influence people, is that I'm not trying to compete with viral social media influencers who have this very like, toxic masculinity or this very like just braggadocious approach. For me, it's more like, guys, let's go. Like, let's get something going, because if you wait any longer, you're going to miss out on the opportunities that you could have benefited from had you started a year ago, a week ago. But having said all that, let's just get started. Right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just get started because time is ticking. Right.
And like you mentioned just a minute ago, it's just small steps, right?
Yep.
And those compounded over time is what yields like the massive results or the big changes in your life or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And in all areas, right? In fitness and in finance and in faith and family, like just baby steps, like wherever you're at, just take that next small step.
Right.
Like
right.
whatever seems attainable. So what inspired you to write the book? Like
Well,
no experience writing a book before.
No experience. I mean, I'd say I would describe myself as a person who's pretty well written. I mean, I've never written a book, so this is the first time. And again, I decided to write the book with the same mentality of whether this book is a New York Times bestseller or not, it will be mine, and I will do it. And nobody's gonna, I'm not concerned with the criticism. I'm not concerned with anybody's, I mean, of course, I want feedback. I'm always open to the feedback, but I want to take action.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to be able to demonstrate the ability to take a plan and execute on it, and then use that as a vehicle to hopefully, inspire people to take action. I know that there might be people saying, "Oh, Alex, you're, what?" Like the same question you're asking, right? Is like, well, the audacity to write a book is similar to the audacity to join the Marines. I'm now part of a population of people that is like in the less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of strive to always be an outlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think the inspiration comes from. I mean, the idea generally is I feel extremely confident in the ability to really like articulate a vision to people. Hopefully it's one that will resonate. Hopefully it's one that will inspire people to take action. But I feel like I have a voice and I've held back for a long time. And now I feel confident that now's the time for me to really put that out there.
Yeah. Why now? Like, why is the time now that you feel like let's share this message?
I think it maybe comes from the fact that, again, time is of the essence, right? I mean, I know I'm in my mid 40s right now, and so why not? Number one. Number two is I think I now have a good body of work. I think I have a good amount of experiences. I have the credibility. I have the repetitions. When I talk about family and what it means to be a good father, I mean, I know that I've given everything to my wife and to my children, all of my time, all of my energy, so I can speak to the person who maybe doesn't know what it's like to go into that situation or who's already struggling in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm meeting new dads, all the time, and I say to them, hey, I feel comfortable being able to say, hey, if you need some guidance, I'm here, because I've got 3 kids who are now almost all teenagers, and I've been there, done that, right? I've seen it all, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like that. What was like, how long did it take you from, okay, I'm gonna write this book? And was it just kind of like, is this something you've been thinking about for a long time? And then now you're just kind of like, okay, now is the time? or was it something
It was
that's more recent and you're like,
it was more recent. You know, I
okay.
think for me, I've always had this in the last few years. I think again with the amount of media that exists out there through social media and the different platforms that exist, I've been a consumer of media, and I've often said, gosh, I think I could do this. I think I could, I think I could speak in a manner that will resonate for a broad audience. Um, and, I just hadn't taken that leap. And so I said, I listened to a video once for a guy who's extremely successful. And one of the things he mentioned was you should write a book and use that book as a way, as a, kind of the platform to then, pretty much open up the net of people that you engage with. And so that was it. I mean, it went from just hearing that to saying, all right, I don't want to wait any longer. Let me get this going.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of taking action. I have had other book ideas
Okay.
that are not self-help style books. Like I've had some ideas. I mean, I have some pretty wild ideas, and I'm starting to get to the point where like, I don't care what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, we'll just learn from that and move on to the next idea.
So that thought of like, I don't care what anybody else thinks, is that, do you think that takes time to build to get to that point? Or is that something you've had, with you for a long time and you've been able to push past like some of the fears and doubts that you might have yourself? Or has that been developed?
I think it's something that's definitely developed over time, but
Yeah.
I've been a person who's been extremely confident from a very young age.
Yeah.
So it's definitely developed over time. That confidence, I think over the last, maybe it started when I became a dad, that I became a little more insulated because I wanted to focus on my family. And so now I'm at a point with my children that they're older, a lot more self-sufficient. I'm, helping them obviously to like navigate through the teenage years, but there's less of a need for that very direct one-on-one time. Whereas I now have a little more time to say, hey, I think it's now time for me to open up my aperture of these ideas and taking action on some of those. So not to say I'm, taking the pedal off parenting or anything, but I think there's just more capacity now because the kids, they're helpful. They do what they need to do for school. They need to do what they, have to do at home and so on and so forth. So it's a lot less when your kids are a little more older and sufficient than when they're requiring, like kids in diapers or anything like that. So it's a little more hands off.
Yeah. I'm in that stage right now. We're 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old.
Oh yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Well, I can give you some guidance if you want.
It's fun times, but it's challenging times.
It's challenging. Yeah.
as you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, so you went skydiving recently?
I did.
First time or
First time
okay.
ever. I always wanted to do that as a Marine, but I never, if that's not part of your job description, they don't just throw you out of a plane, or that they send you to the training. So I never got to do that as a Marine. And as I was getting prepared for the book launch, I was like, I had it set to release on my birthday, which was September 28th. Unfortunately, I underestimated just all the nuances when you get into the end of the rope on a book, and also just a little bits of, nuance with Amazon and release dates and so on and so forth. So I misjudged that. So made a mistake, and it happens. So we move on. But so I knew I wanted to do something a little audacious to promote the book. And I said to my wife, Christina, I said, I think I'm going to jump out of a plane to promote the book. And her answer was, go. And that's kind of the way we function. Like, again, it's like from idea to inception, her and I would describe us as each other's biggest critic, but also each other's biggest supporter, right? So despite us having, a million different instances of disagreeing on a vision or a path or a task or whatever, or color painting of the house, right? I think what we have been fortunate and blessed with is really true partnership in marriage, true partnership as friends, as entrepreneurs. And so very rarely does either one of us have an idea that the other is just vehemently against, right? So that level of support that I get from her is really, I attribute a lot of my success is to having a great partner like her.
Yeah, I love that. So what was it like jumping out of a plane, and would you do it again?
I would definitely do it again. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it. It was kind of funny. It's very quick. So it's
how long from like when you jump out to like your land?
Like 7 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's still a long time in the air.
So the flight up is like a 15-minute flight up.
Yeah.
And and then the drop is you're free falling for about a minute, and then you're just kind of like floating for 6 minutes.
Okay.
So
With the
it was,
parachute open. And,
yeah. So it was exhilarating. It was very exciting. I definitely would do it again. Maybe in the next book.
Yeah.
But I definitely enjoyed it, and it was, like I said, I was calm. I wasn't concerned. I wasn't, I didn't have any real concerns or anything. When we were at the edge of the plane, ready to jump out, I didn't have any idea that we were about to go. So that was interesting. So that we had a videographer that was in front of us. So he steps out, and then I'm attached to a professional, and he kind of did like an arm motion, 1, 2, 3. And on the 3, which I didn't know what the count was, he didn't say, hey, on 3, we're jumping.
Yeah.
He just did a backflip out of the plane, and that was it. So, but it was incredible. I like, it was very exhilarating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they do that on purpose. Like,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think
we're
they
not
don't
going to
wanna-
tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the feeling like when were you nervous, like getting ready to jump out, or sitting at the edge, or you were good? Like,
When we were tippy-toeing out, I started to feel like, well, because I didn't have a lot of like sense of like, how does this
what's the
go?
next
I've never
steps?
been at that point. So for a couple seconds there, I was just a little bit like, I mean, I had like blind confidence that he would lead me to wherever we're going.
Right.
But I literally was like, hey, what if I like overstep? Although I guess we had a parachute, so we'd be just fine. But it was a little bit scary, those first, those seconds getting to the tippy toe part of being at the edge of the plane. But other than that, it was okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm getting nervous just like hearing you tell us about the story. I'm like,
No.
I've thought about doing it. I just never committed to doing it, but maybe I need to.
You just do it. Yeah. Just go do it. And so the funny thing is, even the planning around it, like, so the place I did it was in Zephyr Hills.
Okay.
And they have a Tuesday special. So it's like super cheap on a Tuesday. So I took the day off on Tuesday and planned it. And, I planned it well in advance so that we'd be able to chop up the video and have it ready for my birthday. And so on the day of my birthday, we put out the video and, to kind of promote that the book was available. So the book is available for pre-order on Amazon on the Kindle version, but not the paperback version just yet.
Okay. And then whenever you get that, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes
definitely.
and stuff.
Thanks.
So,
Yep.
so people can get it. But thanks for being here, Alex.
Yeah,
it's a
thank
pleasure
you.
chatting with you.
Likewise.
And I love your story. So I hope
Thank you so
keep
much.
sharing
Yeah,
it,
appreciate
man.
it. Definitely. Thanks
Hopefully
so much.
this is like the first of many podcasts for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Cool.
Appreciate it.